Are you looking for a new whiskey adventure? Then climb in and buckle up. Get ready for one hell of a ride on the Whiskey Trip podcast with your host, Big Chief. Join in as he and his guests explore whiskey and dive into whiskey stories from around the world. Now here's your host, Big Chief.
Hey, it's old Big Chief, and yeah, you're taking another ride on a whiskey trip. And listeners, I got some history for you this week. I've got a little education, and the history I got is just fascinating. There was a time when the word rectifier drew scorn, a time when blending was branded as betrayal and purity was bottled under a lock and key. But times change, right? And legends rise from the barrel, as I like to say. This week on the Whiskey Trip, we're going to walk through the historic Wenzel building in Covington, Kentucky, once the domain of a rogue blenders and whiskey tricksters, but today is home of Wenzel whiskey, a modern-day rectifier with nothing to hide and everything to prove. They're blending brilliance, crafting custom bourbon, finishing whiskey in sherry cask to win gold on the world stage. Wenzel doesn't just run from the past. They honor it, they refine it, and they raise a glass to it. This isn't rectification, it's resurrection. So folks, listeners, people watching on YouTube, I got Mr. Bill Whitlow from Wenzel Whiskey with me. Bill, welcome to the Whiskey Trip, my friend.
I appreciate it. I need to hire you as a copywriter. That was fantastic.
I got some of your whiskey in my glass, and like all good whiskey's meant to be shared. And I was down at the New Orleans Bourbon Festival, and my good friend Jessica Ann, everybody knows her as Bourbon Insider. She's married to Zach from Zach Barrel. She actually stuck a bottle of your whiskey in my hand and said, "Mike, you got to try this right here." She's like, "This is going to blow your mind." And everybody else is like, "I want some of this." And she's like, "No, this is for Big Chief because he's going to get the word out there." And Jessica, I know you're listening, you're watching, girl. Thank you so much for putting me on Wenzel. I didn't really know about you guys, but she was like, "Hey, this just blew people's minds at the World Whiskeys Awards." And I tasted it, and I'm just like, and we're sitting around with a bunch of other whiskey nerds, and everybody that got to try it that day, because I'm pouring it in people's glasses. I said, "Hey, you got to try this." And this is actually your sherry cask right here. And it did win world's best, right?
Yeah, best finished bourbon in the world from World Whiskeys Awards.
Well, hats off to you. I loved it enough to have you on my show, and that's my thing. Is my grandma always said, if you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. So, folks, if you don't see them on my show, I think words speak for themselves. But I got Mr. Bill here with me today to talk about his whiskey and talk about Wenzel. So, Bill, tell me about this, and then we're going to get into the history of Wenzel.
Yes, this first thing we're drinking that sherry finish. We'll talk a little bit about it in the history, but it came from a distillery in Savannah, Georgia that we purchased. So everything we've got on the market right now is sourced, which a lot of people tend to think that comes from 2 or 3 places, and it kind of gets to, a lot of things taste a little similar. What's cool about ours is most of our barrels came from a source that we purchased. So no one else has that same source. So during that, it was cool. We were able to acquire a couple of these barrels, and it went a little different than normal sherry finishing. Usually you'd finish in a sherry cask for 6-12 months max. This was a 4-year-old straight bourbon that went into sherry cask for a full 3 years to finish. So it spent a total of 7 years in wood, but nobody really ever finishes for 3 years in a cask.
I can remember when that word finished was a dirty word almost. Back in the 2015 to 2020, people, their Angel's Envy was just coming out, right? And so there was a lot of bourbon purists out there that just would shame the shit out of you if it had called something finished a bourbon.
And Chris Morris helped get that verbiage changed, where you had to say straight bourbon finished in this, not sherry finished this, or sherry bourbon or whatever.
Yeah. I always thought those people were wrong to shame other people for what they were drinking. Hell, if you like it, drink it. what does it really matter in that history of rectifiers versus distillers from the late 1800s? I mean, we got great laws from that. The Bottled in Bond Act came from that, not just jealousy, but it was a whiskey war of more than just words. Rectifiers were taking small distilleries and they're putting it together and putting it into city markets like the Cincinnati region there where you guys are, Covington, Kentucky, one of the most beautiful little cities there are in northern Kentucky there. We talked the other day. One of my favorite restaurants is right down the road there, the Pepper Pod. Like I said, you don't know if you're going to get cigarette ashes on your stuff or if it's pepper. One of the most beautiful bridges in America, I believe, is right there. A lot of people don't know that bridge in northern Kentucky, Cincinnati, is really the Brooklyn Bridge. To me,
it's the Roebling Bridge. And what's kind of funny, you don't even probably know this. There is a local restaurant called Smoke Justice that wanted to do a specialty release. We actually produce and bottle it for them, and it's called Roebling Rare, and it is the bridge on the label and everything.
Well, I didn't know that. I took a boat under that thing many a times. A beautiful bridge, a beautiful piece of history for the Cincinnati region. Covington, Kentucky, to me, is that Cincinnati region. If you've flown into Cincinnati, you actually fly into Kentucky, into northern Kentucky there. Man, this whiskey right here almost has, to me, while it was finished in a sherry cask, I get some coffee notes out of this, and like a really, really good coffee, or even a coffee liqueur a little bit. It is dark, rich, and delicious, and I can see why it won best finished bourbon in the world.
So the reason I like it and I like some finished stuff is I've been doing bourbon for a long time. I've been running bourbon bars for over a decade before this. And I tasted so many things that just taste like bourbon. And I like things that are discerning, that have unique characteristics that I can remember or go back and pull back out or tell people. And that's why I like this. Like this one, this is one of the more unique finished bourbons I've had in a long time. So I'm really happy to be able to share it with people. And like you said, that richness, I just love how viscous it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's oily. I think it drinks a little hotter than 109 proof, but I think right around 115, I think, somewhere in there for me. But a beautiful whiskey. Let's get into your guys' history of Wenzel. You guys are actually in a historical, really you are in a rectifier's building, correct?
Yeah, it's kind of wild. So one of our founders, his name's Tony. He actually bought this building a couple years ago. Me and him actually got tied together because he originally wanted to make it into a restaurant pre-COVID shutdown and stuff. But it was actually too close in concept. He wanted me to kind of team up with him, but it was too close in concept to another restaurant I was doing in the same area. So we stayed friends. But then whenever all the shutdown hit, he didn't want to do a restaurant anymore, and he asked me if we wanted to do a whiskey experience. And he was like, yeah, I just found out this building I bought a couple years ago, actually they used to make whiskey in the building. So I was like, cool, I'm all in on that. That sounds like a blast. So we kind of joined up and created this process, and that was really cool because he was able to tell me that it was, whiskey was made here, and it just kind of all fell together with that. Now, it was only made here for like 4 years. Henry Wenzel built the building in 1873, passed away 4 years later. He liked to drink a lot, and he was making whiskey for his pub down the street, and they found him with a head bleed on the corner down the street at the age of 40. He drank a lot. But after that, it was kind of cool. This building kind of did all kinds of stuff. His wife actually rented out, and it became a pickle factory for a long time. And then most recently, before we bought it, that boat you took underneath the bridge was probably DB River Boats. And they had this building for like 40 years. It's basically like a shed. So we bought it from them, and it's been really cool to like see it go from a shed with a bunch of boat motors in it to now we've got people in here making their own bourbon.
Well, I have been on the riverboat, but the boat I took under the bridge was a Coast Guard boat.
True enough.
So I was assigned as the boat forces supervisor for that Cincinnati region, and we would get to patrol. But if there was a boat that came in, usually one of the cruise ships that go up and down the Ohio and Mississippi River, they have more than 500 people on. So back in the day, they would require an escort when they came in a metropolitan area. So we would escort them up in there, or if we'd have a presidential visit, or if there was a football game, baseball game, and a concert all happening at the same time, there's enough people in those stadiums that require security on the river.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. I wouldn't say the teams there are good anymore, but there's still a lot of people, a lot of fans that go watch the Reds, the Bengals, and then U.S. Bank Arena is famous for a famous concert in, I believe, the 70s where some fans died.
Yeah, is that the Who? I think it was the Who.
The Who, I believe, yeah. So, very historic region. A lot of people live there and stuff, and I'm glad to see there's a couple of distilleries in northern Kentucky now, including you guys yourself. And you guys are known as the Beeline, is that correct?
Yeah, it's about Covington's the 5th largest city in Kentucky, but it hasn't had a distillery in 100 years. Like, this whole area didn't have distilleries forever, and in about 10 years, I think New Riff's been open 11 years now. Boone County's probably around 10. Like, before a decade ago, there was nothing up here. Nobody was distilling up here, really, for 60, 70 years. Can't explain it because it's on this, limestone shelf here. We have aquifers. We've got great resources up here, but no one was doing it.
Yeah, I can remember when New Riff was just a parking lot for the party store there, and there used to be a gym right down the road there, and that's where I would go to the gym at and work out before I'd go to work. Over just below Delhi, in there's a ferry that runs across the Anderson Ferry and stuff. Was where our shop was, and so I'm very acquainted with that area. Now, the weird thing I thought is you guys are now part of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. Now, the KDA, Kentucky Distillers Association, which is part of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, they wrote a lot of disparaging things about rectifiers in the late 1800s to help out with the Bottle and Bond Act. And now they got a rectifier on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. Isn't that weird?
They try to help who they represent. And they have done great things for us. And at that time, if they needed to protect their distilleries, that's what they're going to do. They've been awesome for us. The Kentucky Bourbon Trail, we're on that now. You mentioned the Beeline. That's kind of a local tourism thing representing like distilleries and bourbon restaurants and bourbon bars. That's a really cool project up here. But yeah, the KDA, the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, we're super excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, I do love the Kentucky Bourbon Trail and the KDA these days. When I was looking up history of rectifiers and how they treated rectifiers back then, the KDA quotes came up, and it was almost disheartening to see people attacked like that.
See, I hadn't even seen that. That part, I haven't done that research on there, to be honest with you.
I'll have to text you the quote on that and stuff. But today, the modern distiller is using those rectifier techniques that would have been frowned upon back in history. Today, blending is not a dirty word. Hiram Walker was the master blender back in the day, and actually when Prohibition came about, he moved all of his operations from Detroit over across the Detroit River into Windsor and started what we know today as Canadian Club. But those techniques of blending, of finishing whiskey were frowned upon then, but today a lot of distilleries use those techniques that you guys have obviously mastered with this sherry cask right here to promote their own brands.
People get confused. Like, yes, a blended whiskey is dirty. That's whiskey blended with neutral grain spirits. A blend of straight bourbon whiskeys is what we are and what all these other places doing great stuff are. And people they're just so similar in verbiage that people get confused. We're a blend of straight bourbon. All of our stuff is straight bourbon. We just like to make the best of the sum of each part. You may like one distillery's, kind of typical flavor notes, but you wish it had this, and you can add this other distillery that has that but doesn't have that, and you try to make the best you can. I think it actually gives you more flexibility and more ability to make a better product without being restricted by the only thing you have at your place.
Well, you said it perfectly. I think a lot of distilleries have embraced those techniques, and I'm glad you said the explanation of blended, where people were adding neutral spirits, because they were doing that back in the day. They were taking like you can't really call vodka unaged, but a neutral spirit like vodka, and blending it with barrels of whiskey to stretch that whiskey over, and then they were adding dye to it, tobacco, prune juice, stuff like that, to make it unpure, to make it taste like whiskey, and then we're selling it to stretch it and get more money out of the barrels. Today, that would still be frowned upon.
I love other distilleries too, and I won't mention any names, but in the 50s, one of my favorite distilleries, their product was a blended whiskey. Some of these heritage distilleries, that's how they got by back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Well, it did get so bad in the 70s and 80s where, distillers were researching out, when the bottom was falling out of whiskey, they were searching out these rectifiers and stuff and trying to sell them whiskey, or bottlers, whatever you want to call them. They were trying to get his whiskey away as much as they could to get their money back, recoup that money and stuff. But today is a totally different market. Our consumer is very keen on labels, and it's very hard to hide anything in our community. Somebody's going to find out, whether it's your mash bill or where you're sourcing your whiskey from. And I love it that you guys are very transparent. Even where you got this whiskey from. This was a whiskey out of Savannah, Georgia. Did that distillery, they close their doors, or you just guys got whiskey from them?
So that gets into a little bit of our history. We opened up a couple years ago, and we didn't have any expectations of moving super fast. It was a passion project, a couple founders, just me and one other guy. It was just two of us here on a regular basis, with a couple of the founders helping out here and there. And we were trying to start small. And then this distillery, a friend of mine sent me a ad that this distillery was for sale in Savannah, Georgia. And we were like, all right, they've got some equipment. It's a decent price. Let's fly down and check it out. I've never been to Savannah. Let's do it. Well, we got down there and we found out, we started tasting their stuff, and we were like, this stuff's really good. Why are they shutting down? And they were like, yeah, we've won gold medal for this, gold medal for this, gold medal for this. Turns out their building became more valuable than their business. It was one of those, they built it in a defunct area, and then that area started getting gentrified, and they told us that the profit they were making on the building was their expected profit on the distillery for 10 years combined. And they got to liquidate. So they made a good deal with us. I went down there, helped them decommission with the help of Distillery Now Consulting. We'll shout out to them. And we sent 14 semis.
14 semis.
Yeah, 14 semis, plus another truck back from Savannah to Kentucky.
Wow, that's some shipping cost right there.
No kidding. That was the still, their fermentation tanks, their cooker, almost 500 barrels. I mean, if it was worth $50, I was throwing ladders in there, their dollies. If it was worth anything, I was throwing it in the truck.
Wow, man, that is a lot and stuff. Now, you guys recently, you have a still on site, and you're going to start distilling. Walk me through a little bit of that.
Yeah, so it's taken a little longer than we wanted to. Obviously, construction is known to take a little longer than anticipated a lot of times. But we just finally got authorization, and we started distilling about a month ago our own stuff. So we are about to start. We've been tanking everything we've been distilling, and we're barreling our first barrel beginning of next month, which is, I can't wait. That's a huge milestone for us.
So you guys got a 500-gallon Vendome pot still, from my understanding. Am I correct on that?
Yep.
I did my homework.
Yeah, like at the time we were buying it, Vendome was way behind. Things were hard to get. Stainless steel was in short supply, copper was in short supply. Vendome was quoting 24 to 36 months on new stills. So that's why we went forward with this used situation, so we could go ahead and just grab it. And then we still sent it back to Vendome, and they polished it, all new gaskets, made sure it was prime and proper.
Wow. Now, I just poured another pour, and I had to take a sip of it. A lot of my listeners know that I'm the weeded king of Kentucky.
All right.
And I love me some weeded bourbon. I might have, I don't know, I probably have a little over 500 bottles of weeded bourbon in my house.
Of just weed? I thought you were just going to say 500 bottles, 500 weeded.
Nah, there's a lot more than 500 bottles, but just weeded alone, I think around 500 bottles of weeded bourbon. And then there's some other bottles of just wheat whiskey and other wheats out there. But this is your guys' weeded bourbon, best in the nation, right?
So
tell me all about this.
2024, we got Kentucky's best limited 12, under 12-year limited release. That's a mouthful. At the World Whiskies Awards, but it's also gotten gold at San Francisco 2 years running. And I love it. This is my favorite drinker that we have. If I'm gonna, there's some other stuff we've done that's really cool. This is if we're gonna sit down and have a couple, this I can just sit here and drink this all night.
Well, this is 112.4 proof.
Okay, maybe not all night, but I can have a couple of these. Whereas the sherry, that's a really intense flavor. I might only have one or two of those. This one I can sit and have a couple of them with.
This is a beautiful whiskey right here. I'd put this right up against Weller 107 all day, every day.
Appreciate that. That's high praise.
That is high praise coming from me. That's like my desert island whiskey. But this is super beautiful. Can you tell me the mash bill on this right here?
Yeah, so this one is going to be a little different. So this is 7-year. It's pot still from the same place. It's barrel proof at 112.4. And it's 65 corn, 12.5 each wheat and oats. And then finish off with malted barley. So that oats listeners, gives it that rich kind of, like I said, it has a fat bottom, if you know what I mean on that. It's got that real big base note to it, that nice dark fudgy, tobacco-y cocoa notes.
Oh yeah, you're talking my love language right there.
That's my stuff right there.
Yeah, I'm getting all that in this and more. This is like me walking down a cereal aisle right here, and just getting that Cocoa Puffs and honeycombs. It is all in this glass and more, and it drinks perfect, that 112.6 proof. I'm really digging this and stuff. And listeners, I'm digging it so much that Bill here sent me an extra bottle and a t-shirt. And at the end of this podcast, we're going to tell you how you can get that bottle and that shirt from me. Thanks to my good friends over here at Wenzel. Bill, I got to thank you for that. Doing a giveaway. We're trying to give back to these listeners, to these whiskey nerds out there that appreciate us, appreciate guys like you and your whiskey. If you're a weeded nut, we're going to try to get you this bottle of whiskey, but you got to participate. So, Bill, how many bottles or barrels are going into one of your blends?
I mean, not much. So the weeded is what we do the most of, what we're having right now. And the latest batch was only 12 barrels. If I'm not mistaken, it was 12 or 14 barrels. Can't remember off the top of my head. But most of our stuff, like our last rye that we did, was only a couple barrels. That sherry was only 2 barrels. Now those bigger barrels, of course. But
those are true. That's a true small batch compared to what like Jim Beam does at 3,000 barrels. That you're truly a small batch.
We're a small boutique brand. I mean, we're even with our new still kicking up, we're only going to be producing 750 barrels a year. Some of the big guys do that in an hour.
Yeah, that is very true. You're right about that. And I know people can't even imagine that, right? But you guys are doing maybe 2 a week at the most with a 500-gallon pot still. And it's a lot of work and labor with a pot still, but there's a lot of love and notes that can come out of that pot still.
Agreed. I mean, I have favorites of both culms and pots. I have appreciation for either, but they definitely produce a different style of product.
Now, before you got into whiskey, Bill, what were you doing?
So I've been in the restaurant industry for 25 years. And then I started running bourbon bars. I mean, every restaurant I worked at, it was kind of bourbon focused. Even when I was bartending at the age of 20, the place I was at had probably 30 bourbons on the shelf, which back in the day, that was a pretty big selection. And then about 2010, I started managing bourbon bars. The Seelbach in Louisville, we had a great selection there. Doc Crow's in Louisville. I was the beverage director for Goodfellas Pizzeria, which has a chain of bourbon bars. I opened up a place called Rich's, which was another bourbon bar that was ranked top 100 in the country. So running bourbon bars is what I've been doing for, like I said, about 15 years now, and then kind of moved into helping run a distillery. I've done distillery consulting in the past as well for some other, actually for some of the heritage distilleries, but more on the bar side. Like help Four Roses do their new guest center. I help them plan out their bar there, put in their bartending program.
I know you're talking about back in before like the early 2010, 2011, you would walk into a bar in Kentucky and they wouldn't have that much whiskey on the shelf. There might be a max of 10 to 15 bottles of whiskey. If you went into a really good bourbon bar, Doc Crow's or the Seelbach, you might have 40 to 50. Now you could go into somewhere like, let's say, Watch Hill proper, and it will blow your mind.
2,000.
Go to Doc Crow's.
I don't know for sure, but Watch Hill proper, they got a crazy amount.
Yeah, and that's across the nation today. You go into restaurants. So there's a restaurant down here that has a few different locations called Whiskey Cake around the nation and stuff. And you go in there, and there's hundreds of bottles of whiskey. And I'm just always shocked at these bourbon bars across the nation now that people just have expansive selection that you can select from. One of my favorite places in this Jack Rose restaurant or the Pontchartrain Hotel in New Orleans is the Bayou Bar. It's they got a great whiskey selection.
Have you been to Cannon in Seattle?
I haven't.
Man, the first time I went there, that was probably like 2019, I think. And I don't know if it's still like this, but at that point, they had such an extensive selection that if you wanted to order, you had to let them know in advance because it would be like so far back in their cellar that they wouldn't be able to go down for 20 minutes and try to find that bottle during service.
But it's worth the wait, right?
Oh, Canyon, man, it was fantastic. I think they were like right there neck and neck with Jack Rose at the time for biggest collections.
So, Bill, going from being a restaurateur, running restaurants, kind of guiding the collection of a bar like Doc Crow's, to working in whiskey now and really selecting your own barrels and blending and stuff and finishing whiskey, is it like being on a barrel pick every day?
It could be. We don't quite do it that way. Like, we're not blending ourselves every day. We're leading other people on how to blend every day, but we're not doing it ourselves. Here and there, every couple of weeks, myself, our general manager, Griffin, who's worked with me for over a decade at different places, Kevin, we got Mac, our distiller, we'll get together and we're like, all right, we need to put together the next batch of rye. So we'll put together the different barrels and we'll all, make different blends, and we kind of just vote. And we're like, all right, cool, Mac, you've got the best rye. That's, doesn't even need a vote. Let's put that together, and that's going to be the next release.
I love that concept of at least you're honest about that. And some people couldn't swallow their own pride and say, you wouldn't think that everything that you blend is the best. If somebody else sitting next to you has a better blend, say, hey, this tastes pretty goddamn good. I think we need to go with that instead of mine.
What's pretty cool is like we've all won. I think the first batch of weeded was my blend. I think the second batch was Griffin's. Our proprietor's blend was mine. The rye that we're going to taste last, that got these best in class finalists in San Francisco. That was Mac. We've all had our winners. So there's real no ego here.
Wow, I dig that and stuff, because there are some places you can run into those egos and stuff. If you've ever been on a barrel pick and somebody's paying for that barrel pick, typically that's the person that wins out.
I've seen a few vetoes.
Deciding. Yeah, it sucks that it's like that, but then you get on a barrel pick where everybody has an equal voice, and that's just the kind of wonderful barrel pick I love.
Sometimes you're picking for a reason.
Everybody has it. Yeah.
When my old restaurant, or when I've been picking for liquor stores back in the day, sometimes I wouldn't pick the best barrel out there. I picked the barrel I thought was going to sell to their consumer. You might have been something lighter, right? I might have liked this huge spice, big fat booty that's smacking you in the face. But their customer is looking more for a smooth, kind of easy drinker.
Yeah. I know when I go on a barrel pick with somebody, I don't like people to see my notes or what I picked because I'm afraid I'm going to influence them. And if they're bringing me along as a podcaster or for my numbers or whatever, I'm afraid that they're going to pick mine. So I want to see what everybody had and where everybody scored. And let's average those out and see what came up with the best. Because you get that if you have 5 people on a barrel pick, then you get that average of everybody, and you really get to see what stood out and stuff. But if they look at mine automatically and then they hide their notes and they're like, oh, well, let's go with that, and I'm like, no, let's figure out what was the best, not just what Big Chief loves, because I tend to go towards the weeded bourbons, the candy notes and stuff, and some stores might have more customers that like that deep spice, deep oak sometimes, or older bourbons. They might have, as I call them, ageist out there. That's all they can see is a number. They can't see that bourbon from Savannah is going to be awesomely tasting and would just blow your mind and stuff. So, yeah. On the second half, we're going to get into, you guys got some programs where people can come in and blend whiskey themselves and create their own bottles, their own labels, and you do a tremendous job at doing that. I've seen your stuff out there. I did the research, so I want to really dig into that. We'll keep sipping on this weeded bourbon right here. And then you guys sent me this big boy here, this big boy Rectifier Rye 3. That one goal, we're going to dig into that a little bit, and it's 121.6 proof, so I'm sure it'll be the perfect finisher for this podcast episode. Yes, sir. So, listeners, you stick with us. We will be right back. Seldom Seen Farm, bringing bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup goodness from everything from pancakes to whiskey cocktails. Seldom Seen Farm in Northern Ohio has something magical for your whiskey cocktails instead of that old basic simple syrup. Kevin Holy and his family are harvesting the sap from over their 5,000 maple trees and turning it into something delicious, maple syrup. He then goes a step further by aging in bourbon barrels for 6 to 9 months. That's right, bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup. Shh, don't tell Miss Viv, but I love to pour it over my butter pecan ice cream. Visit them at seldomseenmaple.com. All right, listeners. Hey, we're back for the second half, and I got Wenzel whiskey with me. If you haven't heard about them, they're in Covington, Kentucky. Yeah, that's northern Kentucky. And I got Mr. Bill Whitlow with me. And Bill, I'm still sipping on this. I actually poured a little bit more. That's how much I love this weeded bourbon right here. It is it's amazingly tasty. I could drink this for breakfast right here. That's how good it is. I know people are thinking no fucking way could I drink this for breakfast, but I could.
Depends on who you're talking to.
In our community, it would be easy to sit down and sip on some of this. Maybe have some eggs and a good biscuit with some ham. Not spicy. It goes good with whiskey.
I have not eaten dinner yet.
Actually, I could pour this in a man mosa too, and make myself a mimosa out of it with orange juice, some champagne, and a shot of whiskey in there. This would be perfect. Perfect proof.
I could check that.
Yeah. So you guys are doing a blending program up there where people get to come in and blend their own whiskey. Walk me through that of what you guys take a customer through.
Yeah. So honestly, it's the biggest part of what our business does now, kind of, and it's the smallest part of what we thought it would be. So our plan had been to do this blending thing where people try 4 different barrels. We walk them through tasting it, and then we teach them how to blend those together. Now, those 4 different barrels, on a typical, thing, it would be all from the same DNA. It would all be from the same distillery, all the same mash bill, all the same age, just different barrels, and they would teach you how to put them together. Ours, we specifically wanted to get a little wild. We didn't want to be the normal upstart. So we were buying stuff from different states, from different distilleries, and then bringing it all back home, and then letting them taste 4 different, from different states, different distilleries, different ages. But we're all kind of like, no man behind the curtain. They're all 53-gallon barrels. Everything we put out. At one point we had some 5-year out there, but everything, like if you came today, everything's between 6 and 9 years. So it's all good aged product. Like I said, no man behind the curtain. And people like it because they get their hands dirty. And we originally thought that process, our biggest thing was going to be doing that with liquor stores and private bourbon clubs and bachelor parties, doing larger amounts. Because we have some people do it and then they get like 100 bottles. And that's where we do like some blinding at the end. People taste each other's and vote blind. That way it takes the ego out of the room. But the biggest part of what we do now is people coming in and they'll do that blend, and then we set them up with a bottle to take home. Some people just come and do the experience and don't take a bottle home. You got that option too. But it's just a fun experience because you get to learn. First off, we'll teach you how to taste straight, and then we teach you how to blend. It's a full experience. It's like a class going into it. So even if you're not a big bourbon fan, you get to spend an hour learning about the stuff.
So you got really different levels where somebody could come in and just take that class and they don't leave with anything, or somebody that comes in and leaves with a bottle, or somebody that could come in and leave with 10 bottles, or you could come in and get a whole barrel, could you?
Pretty much, yeah. I got this past Saturday I did one with a group that's picking up 150 bottles for a special release for their 10th anniversary of their restaurant. Not in 2 weeks, I've got a group coming that we're doing a charity event with, and they're doing around 1,000 bottles. So
wow.
It's
1,000 bottles.
Yeah, we did it last year with them, and we did about 500 bottles, and it went really well, and it raised a ton of money for Alzheimer's Association. So this year we're blowing it out even bigger with them, and going to do around 1,000 bottles.
Wow. And you guys are helping that charity out.
Yeah, so last time I think it raised, I think it was $10,000 for Alzheimer's Association. This time they're going to do 2 different charities, and it should raise about $10,000 for each one.
Wow, that's amazing that it's such a young company is helping a charity out like that, and that they're able to come in and work with you guys and do a special blend for that for a great cause and stuff. A lot of people out there with Alzheimer's are suffering, and their families suffer along with them and stuff. It is if you've ever seen it, it's disheartening to watch that and watch a family have to go through it.
Yes,
you want to say something, Bill?
My mother-in-law lived with me for 7 years. And that's what she passed away from.
I'm sorry to hear.
So
that.
yeah, I think
hey,
you're talking to somebody that knows
her.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Man, what a great whiskey this right here is. I'm going to finish it up, and then we're going to pour some of this rye. But hats off to you guys. And this, you're saying this was from Savannah, Georgia.
This one was from Savannah, yeah. They were doing some real, they were doing some real cool stuff down there. They didn't close for lack of good product, because there's some other fun stuff we've got going with things that they did and that are also fantastic.
Wow.
Now, it's really cool. We haven't released this yet, but I think it was Coming Bourbon posted it. They go through the cola stuff. We've got a rum finished that's coming out that might even be better than the sherry finished.
Ooh, old dirty sailor might have to get some of that shipped out to me.
They were making rum in Savannah, so like about 40 of the barrels, like we bought almost 500 barrels of their collection. Almost around 40 of them were their rum, and they were like a 7-year bourbon barrel aged rum.
Wow!
And their rum is fantastic. We're going to be releasing some of that when our distillery opens. So we dumped some of that, and then used their rum barrels, and then their spirit. I think it was a 6-year bourbon of theirs that we filled in the rum barrels for about 3 months, and now that's tanked, and we're waiting on. We're going to be releasing that when our gift shop opens at the new place.
I might have to come up there and do some kind of Big Chief experiment and put some kind of label on there. So, what kind of label do people get to put on their bottle? Because the TTB is pretty clear about that.
Yeah. So let's grab. Actually, I got a sample bottle right there. So, like, we have. This is like the standard bottle, and basically this is the strip, and you just write, you put your name or your blend or whatever you want it to be, and then we fill out the proof and date bottled and everything. On bigger ones, like that one I told you we're doing 1,000 bottles for, we did a complete custom label for them. It's still the same shape and has our name on it, but like we did different colors and all kinds of stuff. We did
so a bigger, like if somebody's gonna do a barrel or something, you could do something pretty special for them.
Yeah, charities, we tend to kind of just help them out with that. We've had some companies that want it specific to their colors. We have to charge a little bit extra for that just because we've got to do a custom label, send it to the printers. We don't just have that. It's a small run, but it's not that big of a difference.
Well, nice. I love that you guys are customizing stuff like that. Now, I just poured this rectifier rye, the number 3 batch, I'm guessing. This one double gold, 121.6 proof. Walk me through this whiskey right here.
So this is not what I was expecting for it to happen. So this is a 9-year, 121.6 barrel proof. It's a very small blend, but we sent it off to San Francisco, and yeah, took double gold. And now we just found out recently that it's a best in class finalist. So we'll find out in November if we won overall best in class. It's cool. We submitted a rye last year as well, and that one got silver. It was a different blend. And this one, our new distiller, his name's Mac. He came over to us from New Riff, other friends of ours. And he's running the distillery now. And this was his first blend that he put together when he first came on with us. So it's pretty cool that right away he already knocked it out of the park.
Now, what's the mash bill on these right here?
This is some Indiana 95.5. So you can take a wild guess where that one came from. I told
right
you we
across
don't
the river.
only have Savannah, Georgia stuff. That's the most, that's the primary of our collection. But
yeah, right down the river. I'm pretty sure. Not right down the river in a van, but yeah, right down the river.
That's the second time somebody has brought up some Farley to me today.
This is a beautiful candied rye right here. I mean, sticky sweetness, goodness, that high proof. The spice on this is
Still got that
amazing.
heavy, peppery kind of bready kind of spice to it.
Oh, it's so good. I really like this. And you said something like 3 barrels went into this right here.
Yeah, it's a couple barrels.
Wow. And 9 years old. There's distilleries out there not putting stuff out like this. Some big, giant distilleries.
Yeah, it's actually like 9.5 years, but obviously we just say 9.
Wow. I really, really like it. Some people are like, oh, you're a weeded guy. That's my favorite, but I'm a whiskey connoisseur. And for a whiskey connoisseur, what I like to say is you got to love everything, from Japan to the Highlands of Scotland, to Kentucky, all across the United States, Texas, Indiana. There's a lot of good whiskey out there. You just got to search it out. and what you like, and don't disparage other people on what they like.
I'm not a purist. I've always told people, drink what you want if you like it. You know, one of the things I always pull back to, I told somebody, like, I had a guest one time order a Pappy 23 and Coke. And I use this as an example to bartenders I'm training. I'm like, they're like, what? What are you talking about? How do they order a Pappy 23 and Coke? Did you serve it? I was like, yes, I served it. But what I did is I served them Pappy 23 in one glass, some Coke in another glass, and some ice in another glass, and told them, hey, it is a higher end bourbon, so I don't want to guess on your mixture. So I put them a little separate. That way you could taste and mix to your liking. That guy, about 30 minutes later, he was like, thanks for not embarrassing me, and thank you for not mixing that. He's like, I know what you just did there, and thank you.
Well, I mean, there's that old adage, your bourbon your way or your whiskey your way. You drink, hey, you bought it. You drink it the way you want to. I'm not going to tell anybody they can't drink a whiskey with a Coke they like, or if they want to pour a whiskey in a mimosa. I do it all the time. So
I'm not going to hand them my most expensive bottle when they ask for a bourbon and Coke at my house, but I'm not going to disparage you from drinking it.
Well, you at my house, you're probably not going to get the best bottle I have to put in Coke. I maybe have some Canadian stuff. I'll give it to you. Yeah. So you guys are doing all kinds of stuff, and you talked about some maybe rum finishes you're going to do coming up shortly. What else have you guys dreamt up at Wenzel Whiskey?
I mean, so right now coming out, we've got a 16-year coming. We got lucky when we got delayed on our opening because typically the TTB gets like distillery license through in like 60 to 90 days, but we were in COVID, and they're really open on their website. It shows you what the average processing time is at any point in time. Well, during COVID, it was over 365 days because they were short, working from home, stuff like that. So yes, it took us an extended period of time to get open, but we'd already bought barrels. So our barrels were just getting older. So silver lining, we got delayed, but we had better whiskey when we opened. So we've had some older stuff. So we're about to release a 16-year for the opening. I've got some toasted working. I've got some double oaked working. Got some honey finish working. We did some local Amish honey, barrel aged it, and we're gonna be releasing that in our gift shop. And then we re-aged whiskey in those honey barrels. And it's delicious. Even after just a short period of time in there, it's already coming out delicious.
I love hearing that. I just got a honey cask, and I think a lot of people miss the boat on the honey cask. And trying them was what I'm saying. Drinkers out there, if you have somebody that you'd like to try to get into whiskey, a honey cask is a way to get them into whiskey.
I'll tell you, I didn't think I would like them. Whiskey. And then there was a new Woo barrel pick that somebody did locally of a honey finish, and I was like, whoa, what is this? And now I've tried a bunch of different ones.
Well, they're easy drinking, depending on the proof. I've had them all the way from a very high cask strength, 139 proof, down to 80 proof. Jimmy Russell has always said he sold a lot of that. And he said when they first tried to sell American honey, people warned him against it. And he was like, I think they'll buy it. And I think he's got a smash hit on himself, because I know a lot of people that will still buy that American honey.
Yeah, I mean, there is a slight, I think, if I'm not mistaken, American honey is done in that style. The one they had before was like that wild turkey honey liqueur in that little hexagonal bottle. And I think that wasn't aged in honey. I think that was like a honey infused bourbon as opposed to a honey cask finished bourbon, which obviously gave a little different. American honey might be in a finished barrel.
I don't know the exact concept of it, but I think they got people kind of started even before Angel's Envy.
Absolutely.
Into that. And now, Jim Beam starts to do it, and Jack starts to do it, and everybody starts to do it. It kind of catches on and stuff. Any thoughts on doing like any single malts going down that rabbit hole?
That was just a conversation the other day, actually. So our distiller might work on some of that. There's somebody who wants us to work on it with them. Like I said, we do a lot of stuff with different local companies. So there's a local business that likes this single malt they've done before with another distillery. So that we're exploring that with them. It's not on it's not on the fermentation schedule anytime soon for a regular product for us. We might play around on some things, but that's a good thing about being small. We can, if we see a change we want to do, if we see a small special project we want to do, we just do it. We don't have to.
I mean, that's a great concept. You're that small, you can do what you want to do. There's no master there to tell you, hey, you got to do this every day, the same day, over and over and over. You can try different things. And speaking of trying different things, we do have this giveaway right here. This bottle of wheated bourbon. You can see it right here. I do have it in my hands. I got a t-shirt that goes with it. We're going to give that away. And Bill, what I was thinking is to get you guys some love on Instagram, they will have to follow you guys on Instagram. And then over on YouTube, follow the Whiskey Trip and comment your favorite. Like the post, obviously, subscribe to the Whiskey Trip, and make sure you comment your favorite finished whiskey. Do that for me. Follow Wenzel Whiskey over on Facebook or on Instagram, and I'll make sure I check it that you're following them and stuff. It's a very easy concept to follow, and we're going to give away this bottle of whiskey. It'll take a week to do it, and I'll lay out the rules for you for that. You got to reside in the United States. You got to be 21 years of age. Obviously, we can't be giving no whiskey out to teenagers like I would have tried to get back in the day. That was always the thing for me, is to try to go whiskey tripping when I was younger and stuff. And what we'll do is we'll announce the winner of that on the 2nd of June. It's 6:00 at night. That's a Monday night. You know how, listeners, I like to announce whiskey.
That's perfect. That's the day we're barreling our first barrel.
Is it? So that's perfect for
that
you
is
guys.
Perfect. We're doing a ceremony with like the mayor and everything where we're doing our first barrel fill.
And then if you win this bottle of wheated bourbon and stuff, I'd love for you to do a post and tag both the Whiskey Trip and Wenzel Whiskey, thanking them, and tell everybody what you think about it, how much you love it, because I guarantee you, if I love it, you're going to love it. I think that would be a great giveaway, Bill. Somebody's going to get lucky here.
I'll go first. Outside of ours, my favorite finished whiskey I think I ever had was from Starlight. It was a VDN finished rye. It was a single barrel that a buddy of mine's local charity group called, oh my God, Billy Volk, what's it? Sorry, I'm blanking for half a second. I'll get back to it. But it was a VDN finished. I think it stands for Vin de Natural. It gave it like this orangish kind of get to it, but it was freaking fantastic.
Yeah, Starlight's got it going on up there. I've been up there so many times, and had to have my wife drive me home and stuff at Starlight, because Christian up there is amazing.
Christian's a blast.
If you get to go back into one of the warehouses and drink whiskey and thieve from barrels, and then go over to the winery where they've possibly finished some wine in a bourbon barrel, oh my God, what a day. Great food up there. You can go pick some fruit. What a great place to visit in southern Indiana there. Right across the river, really, from Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah, when you're going to Louisville for bourbon country, it's real easy to pop right over there.
I love, Bill, that you give shout outs to other distilleries out there, and you guys are so transparent on where your whiskey's coming from. A lot of people are still trying to hide that. And I think that's a disjustice to their brand and stuff. Being transparent, it's the modern age. You can look up anything. There's no hiding anything these days. And when a company tries to do that, it looks like they're trying to be an old rectifier still and repeat history. Hide what they're doing, and your guys aren't doing that. You're telling people exactly what you're doing.
I don't just drink our product. I've been drinking bourbon for a long time. I've been a bourbon fan for a long time. I've got 1,000 bottles at the house, and they're not all just from Wenzel. I drink other people's stuff on a regular basis.
if you're not trying other people's stuff, how do you know what you're missing out on in life and stuff? I know there's drinkers that I watch them go into a liquor store and they probably buy that same bottle over and over and over and over again, but they really don't know what they're missing out on. There's great whiskeys out there from across the country. And I tell you, listeners, I'm in love with this company right here. Wenzel Distillery, Wenzel Whiskey. I fell in love with it when Jessica Ann handed me a bottle and I put it to my lips. I was like, holy shit. We got some magic here, folks. And whenever people ask me, what's your favorite whiskey? I always say, and you know you've heard this before, listeners, I always am looking for that next bottle down on my whiskey trip. And I find them like this right here. They're going to blow your mind. I want you to try them as much as I've got to try them and stuff. And I'm sure Bill would appreciate you guys walking in there and say, I heard about you on the whiskey trip with old Big Chief, and I want to get your whiskey in my hand. I'm sure you'd love that, wouldn't you, Bill?
I would love that. By the way, I just remembered Whiskey and Wishes was that charity I was trying to remember the name of. It just would not come into my brain. So,
well, sometimes when you're drinking whiskey, that happens.
touche.
It does happen. Well, where can our listeners find you guys on social media?
Social media, I mean, you can follow us on Instagram, Wenzel Distillery, at Wenzel Distillery. You can find us on Facebook, the same, Wenzel Distillery.
You guys on TikTok?
We're not on TikTok yet. I'll be quite honest. Most of us, like I said, it started off with just two of us running most of the thing, and neither of us are big social media guys. And our team is now only up to like 6 or 7 people. We're finally getting into that point where we're getting a little more controlled and consistent social media. So I'm sure we'll get into TikTok before too long. But we're pretty, I don't want to say old school, but pretty just word of mouth is kind of what we've done.
Well, hey, that's what this podcast is all about, is word of mouth and stuff and getting people to find you. And I appreciate you coming on here and taking a chance on the whiskey trip, taking this ride with me, getting a little history, talking about whiskey. It's always a great time for me. Now, listeners, one more time, a bottle of their wheated bourbon, a t-shirt. What you got to do is follow Wenzel Whiskey, Facebook, Instagram. Go over to this post on YouTube, subscribe to the Whiskey Trip on there, like the post, and then comment your favorite finished bourbon or whiskey. And you got to reside in the United States and be 21, and then you'll get put in for it. And we're going to go ahead and pick that winner on the 2nd of June at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm going to try to do it live for it. I promise you, I'm trying to get this stuff straight. But like Bill and them, I'm a one-man show, except for my niece that helps me out, Kenzie Gray. If you want to go check her out, she's got a children's book out there. She's got a new website that she just designed, and she's getting her marketing page off the ground and stuff. But check her stuff out. I really appreciate that. I love her to death for helping me out. Kenzie, I love you, girl. You're always helping your old Uncle Mike out, and it doesn't go unappreciated. Trust me. Well, Bill, any last words for my listeners out there?
No, I mean, we're Covenant's only, Covenant's own, and we just like good whiskey and try to put out some good stuff. So come see us. We've got our new distillery opening up. You know, our whole, we're distilling, but the whole facility should be open literally in about a month. So if you're in town in a month or so, we'll be able to have our full facility open to you.
I got some friends there in Cincinnati, and I'm going to send them your way. Larry Neltler, I know you're watching, buddy. Sean Summers, 2 of my buddies there in that northern Kentucky region and stuff. Jerry Mussman, I'm going to make sure these guys come and pay you a visit. Larry Neltler is like an old school head there.
Sending me some new friends.
Yeah, they'll come drink whiskey with you for sure. So my Cincinnati friends over there, go see Wenzel Whiskey. Go see Wenzel Distillery. Listeners, you know where you can find old Big Chief on social media. You can find me at The Whiskey Trip on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and now YouTube. You want to check these things out, these videos I'm doing. You can see my real reactions to whiskey as I drink it with my guests and stuff. If you're listening to me, make sure you listen to Mark and Matt from the Bourbon Life. They're always putting out great content over on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. I'd really appreciate if you check them out. Please leave a 5-star review and some comments. No 1-star reviews because I'm not like that. Come on now. You know that. If you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. But 5-star and those great comments, and then post those back over on my Facebook page, the review of the whiskey trip. I'm at 61 reviews right now. I'd love to be at 100 by the end of the year. But those reviews, those 5-star reviews and comments, they help get great content on my show, get great distilleries like Wenzel Distillery, Wenzel Whiskey, and great guests like Bill Whitlow here. I guarantee you, you're going to want to take this ride with me every week. I'm trying to put great content. I got some great new guests coming on shortly. I just got a new package today from a small distillery up in Pennsylvania. You're going to want to listen next week for that. And there's another giveaway. Yes, indeed. Now, Miss Viv is trying to steal the T-shirt from that package. I'm going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you the truth. She was like, I love that T-shirt. But no, seriously, you're going to love this guest. I've had plenty of chats with him, bringing back that Monongahela rye history to whiskey. You're going to want to check out this episode. I'm just having a great time here, trying to bring you great content. So stick with me. I'm going to bring it through the end of the year. And then next year, I'm going to try to do something even bigger. So if I can do the rest of the year and do giveaways all year long as distilleries work with me on it, I'm going to keep doing it. A bottle or two a week, get that whiskey in your hands. I know you're going to keep sticking with me. So if you have a distillery in your backyard, if you have a brand in your backyard, in your city that you want to be on my show, send me an email at mike@thewhiskeytrip.com. I'll try to get them on my show. That's how I found Wenzel Whiskey, was through Jessica Ann. She wanted them to be on my show, and I reached out, and Bill was gracious enough to get right with me and stuff. Next thing you know, he's on the show, and we're podcasting away. So stick with me, listeners. I'm really enjoying this. This is old Big Chief. Thanks for taking this ride with me.